Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I really appreciate all of you taking the time today. I know it's been hectic. To whoever don't know me, my name is Diana. I'm the Business Development Manager here at London Underwriters. And before I pass the mic to them, I would like to introduce Janine and Dave. They're going to be presenting about 3 Insurance shortly. They are our account managers. So I'm very excited about this webinar because it's our first 3 webinar that we ever done together. So thank you so much for making this happen. Now I'm gonna pass the session mic to you, the session control to you, Dave, and
Okay.
the mic is yours.
Thanks, guys. Welcome to our training session. Again, I'm Janine. Today, we will be focusing on the quoting system and the key processes to help streamline your workflow and support your agency's growth. Dave will be reviewing the essential points from the attached documents. We're going to be covering everything from quoting and underwriting to managing policies efficiently. Our primary goal is to help equip your agencies with the knowledge and the tools to maximize the platform and help you guys increase your business's success. So we are excited to partner with you on this journey and ensure that you guys have the support needed to grow. A few things I do want you guys to think about. One major point here is why 3 could be your preferred carrier. Here are some key advantages. Number 1 is we have a comprehensive coverage. 3 provides you an all-in-one solution covering general liability, business interruption, workers' compensation, commercial auto, and more to simplify protection for your businesses. We also have an efficient quoting and binding process. So with this platform, we've streamlined the process. You guys can quickly generate quotes, finalize your policies, and get clients the coverage they need with minimal delay. We're going to focus on your business's growth. So 3's offerings are designed to support your business clients' growth, ensuring that they have coverage to stay protected as they scale and grow. Here's a few key points while you're listening when Dave reviews these important documents. Quoting and finalizing. Quotes have a 10-day expiration, but you guys can clone the quote, push the date out to restart that 10-day period. We never want you to use the finalize button unless you are ready to bind and pay for that policy, as it locks the quote. Underwriting guidelines, there are rush guidelines in place, especially for high value of quotes, and referrals or declines are reflected in the underwriting results tab. Cloning and adjusting your quotes. Cloning allows you to make changes to deductibles, limits, and more without re-entering all the information, ensuring efficiency. If you guys ever need assistance, you can always email us at partners with an S at 3insurance.com. 3 is spelled out. That's partners at 3insurance.com. You can give us a call at 1-855-430-7224. And now you can always use our new chat feature. Please make sure to always provide us the submission number, which the quotes start with a Q and policies start with a P, and they're followed by the state abbreviation. We cannot assist you unless we have that information. So we want to make sure everything's nice and easy for both of us. So let's get started. Dave, you're ready.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Janine. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We are going to try to keep this to an hour and 15 minutes, maybe if we get through it quicker, that's great. Just want to level set what we have here. We have a few training documents. We do have, and I think you have a link to the PowerPoint. The deck is about 50-ish, 7 pages. We are not going to go through every one of them. The ones that we go through are going to be pretty quick because the system is very smooth to get through. It's really the underwriting collaboration, when we have referrals, they're the things that you want to really hone in on. We have a couple of quick guides, FAQ. So we've taken a lot of the tips and suggestions that are embedded in the PowerPoint at various sections and pulled those out. Because as you start using this system, you're going to get familiar with it real easy. It's nice to just have that quick guide right there and say, oh, what happens if I have that? Oh, right here. Here it is. It's what it's one of those things. We have a quick guide that talks about statuses. The quoting system is really based on a status. It starts out like a draft, and as it moves through the life cycle, it moves into the finalized stages, and then it gets bound. So we're going to talk about those. They're pretty important, so you have an understanding of where your quote is in that life cycle. And then we just have one that's just tips and tricks type, just one little document. There's some room on it. If you want to make some notes, feel free to. And I'm going to talk about each one of those a little bit. But as adult learners, we have to hear and see things 2 and 3 times sometimes before the light bulb comes on. Sometimes on Mondays, it may take 4 or 5 times before the light bulb comes on. But that's kind of how we learn as adults. So what you'll hear me say when we're going through the presentation, I may say that's a notable note. That's probably one of those things that you want to write down or take a note on your computer, however you want to do it. These are the heavy hitters. These are the things that we hear, we see, we have to take calls for every day, and so we know these are the big daddies that you really want to keep in front of you. So just remember, when I say notable note, this is one of those things where he must want us to write this down because it's important. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn my camera off because my screen seemed to work faster because of the bandwidth. Um, if that's okay. So first I'm going to go over to some of the job aids. So let me share the job aid for the statuses. I think that's important to know what's going on with the system. So here's the little job aid at a glance, and here's all our statuses. The three big daddies are right here. These are the ones that this is kind of how it walks through. You start off as a draft, right when you put the quote in. You move up to the quoted status. Okay. And that's really where it locks it. You got a premium, but you can do some features. Then it goes to the finalized status, which that's one of those things where I'm ready to bind. You have you've already got the okay. We're good with the premium. You're ready to finalize and pay. And then we have these two ancillary type statuses. If it's referred, every one of your quotes are not going to just go through with, green lights to the end and bind. It's not going to happen. Depending on, well, it could, but referrals just mean nothing's wrong with it. We just want to talk a little bit, a traditional underwriter agent collaboration. Not really talking, it's all through email. And then we have the decline. Sometimes we have a decline right off the bat. The dynamite factory, when you put that in there, it's probably going to decline. But it could be one of those things where the account goes into the referral status and you start collaborating with the underwriter. And then as they, peel the onion back, they say, yeah, this is probably not what we want to do right now. It doesn't fit into our appetite guide. So that could be a decline as well. So there's automatic declines, and then there's ones that potentially could happen, as you progress through the life cycle of the quote. So draft, that's the initial entry. It always starts out as in draft. Price indications available, which means price indication, aka is rating it. So you can get a price indication. It doesn't mean it's approved. It doesn't mean anything. It just means here's kind of where you are right now. So the draft could be in the referred or not referred. So it's the beginning. So it could be in draft right away, but it could still have referrals that need to be talked about with you and the underwriter. You can't clone. I think Janine mentioned that If your quote expires after 10 days, you have the ability to clone it, which is creating a new iteration, and you can change the date on your own and bring it back alive. So that's what the cloning feature is. It's also for, hey, I want a quote that's $500 deductible, and then let's clone it or make a new iteration and get a premium for $5,000 deductible. So that's what that is. But you can't do that in this draft status. Underwriting results, when you're in the draft, this is going to be a notable note what underwriting results are. Notable note, when you're done quoting, underwriting results, it's a tab. It actually tells you if you have any referrals. It says, hey, we'd like some loss runs, not just like that. And it might say, hey, we need some more information about the building. So this is where it's going to list your referrals. So you actually see them right off the bat. You don't have to wait for an email from us. Now, the next status is quoted. No referrals are generated, which means um, we don't need to talk to you. So there is no referral. So you can move it to the quoted status. Or you did have referrals, you and the underwriter talked, and the underwriter moved it up to the next level for you because it's approved. Okay. This is where you get the cloning availability. This is where once you've got a quote, again, you got a premium and it's approved, you can do clone where you can make additional changes. You have the ability to get a quote letter or an installment breakdown on a PDF under the documents. We're going to talk about that when we get into the quote. The quote's locked in this quoted status, which means you can't make any changes to that version, but they've just said you could do different deductibles. Well, you have to clone this quote first, and then you can make deductible changes. Okay. And it will change the version number from version 1 to version 2. Finalize. Remember, boom, and then this is the second level, and this is right here. This is a notable note. I see everybody writing this down. Never, ever, ever, especially the folks that have never used this, and maybe some of the ones that are already, don't go down that road to see curiosity. What's going to happen? If you click on finalize before it's time, it locks everything. It means we're ready to pay. So we don't want to finalize this. We get lots of calls with new users saying, oh, I was just trying to see what would happen. I hit finalize. Well, you can't do anything after that. Next step is pay invoice. We have to undo it for you. You don't want to have to do that in the middle of the night because the cool thing about the system, it's open all day long, all night long. So you can go in there at 2 in the morning. If you had something that was no referrals and you put it in, you could literally bind and pay it at 2 in the morning. Okay. But if you had that, you finalized it and then you said, wait a minute, I didn't spell it right, or I should have had LLC at the end of the name insured, it's locked. You got to wait for us to unlock it the next day. Referred, pretty much what you can imagine. It's in the draft status right when you first put it in. You might have some action items under that underwriting results tab that we talked about. That's where you're going to see all that. You have no cloning ability. Price indications available because it's just an indication. So even though you have referrals, you still can get, a price indication, even though you and the underwriter still need to talk a little bit about, some things. No quote letter because we can't give you a quote letter because we haven't finalized anything. We haven't decided one, if you've met the referral requirements and, so you can't have that functionality until it's in the quoted status and it's out of the referred status. Cannot finalize or pay invoice. So you won't see these buttons. You'll notice that the buttons are interactive based on what status you're in. So if you're in the finalized status, you're going to see extra buttons that say pay invoice because that's the next step. But if you're in the referred status, you're not going to see this because it's not ready yet. You can't see it. So that's the nice thing. It kind of is a little safety net, you know, so you don't want to have to do something. And if decline is basically what it says, you can just look up there. So let me talk a little bit about FAQs. So we've pulled a lot of the big heavy hitters. I'm not reading all these. This is for your leisure when you have nothing to do and during the day, you can read this. We've pulled these things out and have gotten, compiled a list of things that we've heard from people. It's broken out into system. So here's all some system, and this is not an all inclusive list. This wouldn't be a quick guide. It would be a volume 10 book if we had everything in here. Here's underwriting collaboration. What's going on with underwriting collaboration? How do I get through it? And then there's another, page 2. Then billing. So here's some questions about billing. I'm going to go back to page 1. So just real quick, just like Janine said, does the quote have an expiration date? Remember she said it expired in 10 days? Yes, 10 days after the effective date, but you can clone it and do it and it'll start the 10 days over again. Effective date, not the date that you put it in. Here's another big one. Is there some kind of rush referral? Are there underwriting rush guidelines in place? Yep. You have to have at least 5 million or plus in revenue and 100,000 in premium. No exceptions. No exceptions unless the underwriter says, "Hey, John, push that through. I'm allowing you to do that for whatever reason." That's the only way they'll do it. Again, here, should I use the finalize button? Never, unless you're ready to issue the policy. We already talked about that. Here's another big one. We talked about being cloned, so we can clone things. We have the product 3 with work comp and 3 without. Here's one that always comes up. They quote it with work comp. And then you're like, well, let me see what it's going to be like if we have work comp. You can't clone because this is the product. You can clone like deductibles and, do things like that to make changes throughout the versions. But in this case, because that is a product and without is a product, you would have to start a new quote. All right. So then here's some of the underwriting collaboration. Will we receive an email if referred or declined from underwriting? So this is what happens when you have a referral and you click on the refer button to send it to underwriting. You're going to get an email. You're going to get a confirmation email. That's it. No ring a ding ding, nothing. Just an email, and it will give you instructions. From then on out, that email thread will be your communication thread back and forth with the underwriting. They'll tell you what they need. You'll send it in. They'll say, okay, we need some more. You'll send it in. Okay, it's approved, and you'll know. So when they approve a referred quote, your status will change to the next level, quote it. So when you go back in after you get your approval, you'll see that your status is moved to the quoted, which at that point you can clone, you can finalize, and such. Though you could get a decline. So if you were to go back into your account, you would get it. You would see that your status bubble is decline. All right. And here's some other things. How do I generate a quote letter? Once your quote is in the quoted or finalized status, then you can go and view it because we have to have numbers first. Okay. And then real quick, billing. Here's some just quick things. The one thing that I wanted to talk about, we're not going to go through the slides. It's in the deck. It's in the PowerPoint. When we get to that point, we're just going to jump out because by the time you actually bind something, it might be 2-3 weeks later, you're going to forget about it. So why waste your time? I'd rather spend it on things that are valuable for the quoting and the collaboration. This basically says if you have anything to do with billing, you can go to slide 41 and see the details. Screen by screen, screenshots. It's very intuitive. And of course, you can always call us, email us, or do the chat like Janine mentioned. Last one, notable notes. This is just a really quick down and dirty. Here's what happens. If you have a referral, it's already in the draft status because Dave said that's right when you put it in. Start off in the draft status. The next thing you do is go to the underwriting results tab. This is going to make more sense when we see the screen, and I'll refer back to it. View your action items. You're going to have a few because it's referred. What you need to do, click on the referred button. See how it's grayed right there. Top left-hand corner. This will send the submission to underwriting. Notable note, if you don't do the refer button, it will sit there. No one knows that it's there. What's going to happen is John's going to call in and say, Dave, nobody's called me in 4 days. I'm going to go in and look at it. Janine's going to go in and look at it and say, guess what, John? You forgot to hit the send button. Just like when a text, how many times you do a text and forget to hit send? This is the same thing. When you hit the refer, that's when it goes to the underwriter queue, and that's how they get it. You'll still get your email once you hit the refer button. So this is just a quick and dirty. And this is just a little note. You always have to make sure the price indication or rated button is, the quote is in a rated status. Honestly, If you look at this in your real world, this is grayed out if it's not rated. And if you hover over it, it'll say, hey, we need to get the price indication before we can click refer. So once you click the refer, your quote's in the referred status. This over here, no referrals. Again, quote's draft because it's the first time in. You're going to look at your underwriting results and see there's nothing there. You're good to go. So instead of having this refer button up in the top left-hand corner like it states, you're going to have a quote because you're going to move it to the next level of the status yourself. Because again, that's the great thing with the system. If you stay within the underwriting guidelines or guardrail, as I say, you get no referrals. You click the quote button yourself, and then you can make clones. You can get your quote letter. You can bind using the finalize button. Again, you have to make sure you have that price indication or AKA in the rated status. It will let you know because you won't be able to do it. And here's just some things. Here's some things that you need to do. I'm not going to read them, but these will help speed up the underwriting process if you already have this. You're going to get to know when things are going to refer, when you have multiple buildings, when you have over $100,000 of premium and such, what is going to be needed. You'll get to know that. Okay. So that is the quick guys. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and we're going to go through this as quick as possible. So here's some of our launch dates, and a lot of these have moved up. So, this PowerPoint could probably be updated one more time, but you get the drift here that these are already things that are installed in SOCOTRA. If you see these dates here, this means we'll just use Utah. December 12th. December, listen to me. Christmas time? No. October 12th, you should be able to see Utah with a 10/1 effective date. So that's kind of what that means. The other thing is, all you got to do when you're in SOCOTRA, if you don't see the state in there, it's either one, we don't write in it, or it hasn't been, loaded into the system yet, but we're very close to having all these done by the end of the month. So it's clear on your dashboard or the main board how to look at things when you're in the account. It's clear. It tells you the producer, the team, agency. This little bubble here, that's the status bubble. Kind of look familiar, right? This is finalized. You'll see draft. You'll see referred. You'll see declined. You'll see quoted. That's the little status button. There's your submission number. Now, because we've updated it since this slide, you'll see version 1 under here. If you clone it, you'll see version 2. Over to the right, clearly shows the effective dates. Here's your dashboard. This is all about a left navigation bar here between submissions and policies. And then depending on where you are, like this depicts submissions. Here's all the filters that you can have. Obviously, this has accounts already here, and these are going to be your accounts. You can, let me see my draft. Let me see my finalized. Let me see my quoted. Is there anything in moratorium? This is a way to filter. Now, you could do policy the same way. Click on the policy and you have all these filters. And over here, it'll tell you the different statuses. So you have the ability to manipulate a smaller, view. Now, when you come in the beginning, obviously this has lots of accounts. Yours will have, you may have a few, I don't know. It's new submission right at the top. There's all your filters, just like we said. Now, very first thing it says, do you want 3 with or without work comp? All right, these will be grayed out if it's a state that's not available. So that's the nice thing. You don't have to think about it too much. Okay. Now, once you're in the account, you kind of got the first initial hurdle. I'm going to briefly show you. I'm not going to read through every one of these screens because the system is very intuitive. It's just like any other internet-based system. It walks you through. You answer questions. Sometimes you may, as an example only, it may say, do you have dynamite? And you say yes. Well, then more questions might open up down the road, or you might get a decline right off the bat. So it's interactive, real time. So again, right here, it just really walks you down every one of these. You have it'll ask you about operations, locations, and so on and so forth. Underwriting results. I know everybody wrote that down as a notable note. That's where you find your referral information under underwriting results. Coverage summary, notable note. This is where you get pricing indication. This is where you rate it. This is where it'll show you a snapshot of here's your GL, here's your auto, here's your work comp, here's your property. So it is a summary, but it's also where you get the rate button or get price indication. Okay. Now, notable note, always use real live data. Never use your phone number when it's asking for the insureds. Never use your email. When they're asking for insured's address, it's not the business address, it's the actual where they actually live. So that and tax IDs and things like this, because it holds things up, and at the end you could get a direct notice of cancellation if we find out later after you bind it there's issues. So now we're on to operations, and it just asks you all the questions. This is all geared towards what business type that you selected. Is it a lesser's risk? Is it a bar? Is it a restaurant? Is it hospitality? So this right here generates all of those questions. And again, you might say yes or no to one of these, and it might add one or two more questions that need more definitive answers. Okay. Locations, you're going to add your locations. Once you actually put your location in, and this is nice because it won't let you get past here, it has a verify button or validate. What it does is it validates your address, and like it says, it adds the flood zone, the crime zone, and a couple little things behind, like construction and things like that. So it does a lot of that artificial intelligence for us and does some estimating through a system that we have behind the scenes. And then this is just something about the crime score. If hotels crime scores are 40 plus, they're automatically declined. Okay. So you might get through here to a certain degree and automatically get a decline. And see right here, here's your statuses because it's the first time in. It says draft. If you answer one of these questions that it doesn't like, it might derail you right to the decline, and this will change to decline. Okay, so again, it's just walking down that left navigation bar. You're going to put owner's information in. Excuse me. We require owner's date of birth and address. So the one thing is sometimes you may, because you're new at this, you may not know exactly everything that we need up front. And so if you don't have the information, don't willy-nilly it. You're more than welcome to jump out. Everything up to this point would be saved. All right. Okay. So now we're moving on to premises, general information, putting the premises information in, and there's a second. So this is the second part of the premises. So here is where we get some notable notes. So because of that verification on the premises, a lot of this information automatically populates, like flood zone, crime zone, and some of this data. It also estimates. It gives you a building estimate. It gives you personal property or other property. If you hover over the little I, it will tell you, because our product's a little different. We're not going to say we got an inland marine policy for hand tools. We have, EDP coverage. All of it's included. And if you look at this, if you hover over the I, it'll tell you, hey, this is, if you can flip it upside down out of the building, it falls out, it's covered. It's part of that. So it's very unique. So here's the thing that could happen. Write this one down. If in the AOP you put 0 and we feel that it should be 120,000, you're going to get a decline for that particular item. You could have another referral that was just, hey, we need loss runs. So where are you going to go to find out what you need for a referral? To the underwriting results tab. So you might see one line that says, hey, we need loss runs. And the other line says your TIV is too low. Total insured value is too low because of what you just put here, 0. And that's declined. So that'll decline the whole account. You can come back and come in here and change this 20 up or down 20%. I'm going to show you where you can find, because right here, it doesn't tell you what the estimate or what we think should be a proper value, but there is a spot that the system shows you where you can see where the estimate is, and then you can come back and adjust this accordingly so that it comes out of the decline for that particular referral. Doesn't mean your referral for the other guy for loss runs is clear. It just means the whole account is in a decline. This is important right here. So you can adjust this. Now, if you get a real decline for Dynamite Factory, you're done. You can't do anything with that. All right, so I'm moving forward. So they do have, underwriting will confirm building material, use accurate information to avoid post-mine endorsement with additional premium. So if they do find that there's, that we probably should have had a little higher or whatever, there could be some post-mine adjustments. The one thing that's kind of neat is sometimes when you come in here and put this in after you go back and adjust it, it gives you, it squeals. This is like the little refresh button here, because it'll say you need to refresh, and then you're like, where is that at? And in the real world, when you're looking at your screen, it's like little tiny guy here. So that's all you have to do. All right. So work comp, we're not going to talk about that much because it just pre-fills in a lot of stuff. You're going to exclude the individuals or officers as needed. So this is just a screenshot. If you're trying to exclude some of the members, we call it members, which are the actual officers. So once you fill out the screen, this is what it looks like. Here's your work comp algorithm for rating purposes. And then down here, it's saying, hey, here's the guys that you excluded. Vehicles. You come here, if you do have vehicles, feel free to add them in. It's the same stuff you're used to seeing, VIN number, cost new, driver information, all of that's what you're used to. If you don't have vehicles, just move on, come down to the next one. So drivers, if you don't have vehicles, you won't have drivers. If you have claims history, you're going to go there. If you don't have to. So it just moves you forward. So this is just a notable note. Our product has hired and unknown part of it because it's all comprehensive, like Janine said, and it's just part of it. So we don't operate like the traditional, if you all are familiar with symbols, like symbol 1 is all vehicles versus symbol 7 is scheduled. We don't operate that way. We don't use symbols. So it's either on or it's not. If it's on, the vehicle's covered. If it's not on, it's not covered. So if it's not scheduled, there is no coverage. All right. So I'm going to blow through here because they're pretty intuitive. This is all about drivers and the vehicles and the claims. So you can always, I'm really just trying to get you in to get the bulk of the navigation under your belt. You have a spot for additional interest. Again, you're just walking down this left navigation bar. The next stop is the underwriting results. And I know Steve, I know there's a Steve on here. I'm just making that name up. This is where you would see if you had any referrals. So this is really what it looks like. And you can see that your status little bubble here is draft, like Dave said. It's the first time in. That's why it's there. I'm under underwriting results. I have nothing. There's no action items. Woohoo! That means I can move to what, Janine? You can move to the next level. I can, right here, it doesn't show, but there's a little button here that says quote. You can move it to the quoted status, the next level on your own. It's within the underwriting guardrail. You'll see the finalize button after you get into the quoted status. You'll be able to pay the invoice. You'll be able to see a quote letter, which also includes like a premium breakdown if you have it, if you selected that. It will also show, it gives you the ability to clone. And then there's also a button that says pay invoice. Okay, so here's basically what it looks like. We're back to underwriting results, right? We know it's draft because that's the very first level of the status. We see, we have an action item and it says referred. You won't see this. You don't see this. We'll just go over what this looks like. Name insured, 3 without or with. Here's your status. This will always change based on where you are in the account. Here's your submission number. The new version, what you guys are going to, we'll see version 1 under here. It'll say version 1. Here's all the name, your producer or agency name, your effective date. We know we have it. So what did Dave say about that? What do I do? Oh, yeah, that's right. If I go into underwriting results and I have one, that means I'm going to see that refer button up here. If it's grayed out, I can hover over it and it'll say, hey, you need to rate this or get the price indication first, then hit the refer button. Didn't Dave say come down the coverage summary, get the price indication, this will come alive, and then we can hit referred. And just as a notable note, if you don't hit referred, nobody's going to know that it's sitting there until you call in and say, why hasn't anybody called me in 5 days? And then Janine will say, because you didn't hit refer. And of course, now these screens are a little old, but like Janine had mentioned earlier on, we have a little chat bot right here. There's a little chat guy right here that you can say, how come I can't click the refer button? And somebody will chat back and say, is it price indicated? Have you rated it? Because once, like I said, if you hover over this, you'll be able to, it'll tell you. The other thing is that if you didn't have any underwriting results, referral, there are none, you would have a button here that says what? Tina? Tina? I know there's a Tina out there. Quote. There would be a button here that says quote. So these are interactive based on what's going on. No results, no referrals. You get the quote button. You can quote it, click the quote button yourself. It moves to the next level, and then you can move forward. So coverage summary, which is the last guy here. Just like Dave said, there's the get price indication. Notable note, underwriting results are where you get referral information, if you have any. Coverage summary is where you get a snapshot of the coverages that you put in, where you go and rate it, where you can go in and click rate because you need to do that. Change your pay plan if you want as well. But remember what I was just talking about with if you didn't put the AOP in that wasn't high enough, if you put 0, you could get a decline just for the TIV, not the whole account, but just for the, but it does lock it. You can't do anything unless you change it. And didn't Dave say there was a place where you could actually see what the suggested value was? He did. Quote summary. And if you look at this, you have business liability. So here's your limits. Here's your cyber. Here's your work comp or GL, building, all other. 1 million user specified. That would be what you put in. So we'll pretend this was a 0, but right down here it says here's the suggested. So if there's a suggested of, let's say, $100,000 and you put 0, you're way too low. Now, you can, even though it's in the decline status, and you remember because you took good notable notes, you came back over here and say, let me see what the suggested is. You can take 25% of this, the suggested, notable note, AOP, 25% of the suggested. We want you to be honest and we want you to, be ethical, where you would put something in that's true, is best to your knowledge. If you go and say, we'll just pretend that 25% is $30,000, you could go back to your AOP under premises. So your AOP is under premises. And then when you go into premises, you can change it from 0 to 25,000. Right when you do that and you hit save, your little decline status will now come back alive to the quoted status. So you have the ability to be in control of that. Again, you can't undo some declines. Like if the underwriter says, we don't like this account, no, you can't do that. But when you're quoting at 2 in the morning and you say, oh, that's right, I can come under here and see what the suggested is, you can do that on your own. Okay. All right, so this is just the same screen, the summary, a little bit bigger. This is where in the event that you wanted to create a clone and have one version at 5,000 and then one version at 50,000, you could come under here. And this is kind of goofy because, here's your limit. You can adjust your business liability or GL. You can change your limit right here by just clicking the drop down. You have the ability to change some deductibles. There's just little drop down boxes right along here, and you can, make your changes accordingly. So this is important here. So what's going to happen is Dave already told me I've made good notes. When I have something under underwriting results, that means I have action items. That means I have a referral. All I need to do is click the what? I need to click the top left-hand corner and click on refer. You guys are making great notable notes. When I hit refer, as long as it's in the rated status or I click the price indication, that will send it to the underwriter. What do I do after that? What happens is you will get an email, and it's a confirmation email. And it just basically, whatever the items that are in your underwriting results tab will be on this email. It'll say, I'm just making these, I don't know exactly what it says. We need loss runs, we need a SOV. So if you have 3 items in that underwriting results, you're going to get an email that says 3 items, and it will instruct you what you need to do. Does that mean the underwriter has it yet? No. It's just an automated email saying, we're working on it. Once it's assigned to the underwriter, you're going to get an email back. So from here on out, once you have that email, the thread back and forth from the email is how you operate. They're going to ask you for some things, you're going to send it back in that thread. They're going to say, I need a couple more things, and you're going to answer it. They're going to say, okay, it's approved. That's how you're going to get the approval. You go back into your account, you're going to see that it went from the referred status to the what? Steve, you got it. It's going to go from the referred status to the quote status. That's the next level, which means now I can do whatever I want. I can do cloning. I can change some deductibles. I can finalize it and pay for it. Okay. Also, that email could be where they say, thanks, but no thanks. It's a decline. And of course, if you go back into your account, your status will go to decline. Now, the rushes, we already talked about the rushes. We have that guideline on the FAQ. I told you I was going to refer back to that. That FAQ for the declines stands unless the underwriter says, hey, Steve, rush that back to me so I can get through, so we can get this bound for you. Unless the underwriter says it, and you can put in anything you want in that email, they're not going to rush it unless it meets our guidelines because we have so many quotes. So this was on our notable notes. This is just a snapshot of this is what happens that helps you speed up. You're going to get to know when we want 3 years loss runs, if you have claims that you put in the system when you were going through it. Anything that's $100,000 in premium, automatic, you're going to get, we need loss runs, period. Even if there are no losses, when you put it through in the application, it's going to refer saying we need these. And the other thing is we don't accept Accord apps. They want, when the underwriter sends you an email and you respond back, they want that in an Excel, like a statement of values, because the way the system works, it automatically uploads and it just makes things speedy. They can get through these quicker. This is just really a snapshot of kind of what this is kind of wonky, but this is what you might see when you get your, email back, as I call it, a confirmation email when you're quoting or when you have a referral, sorry. It states your submission number, your version number, your name, the standard stuff. And then the referral reasons. You might have only one, but you might have 2 or 3. So it will just show you right here. And, you can move forward as instructed. But again, the key is always use the email back and forth as your thread. If you don't, then it gets lost, or it could. Now, this is like a oh, okay, this is another option for the email, the confirmation email. So I'm not going to bore you with that, but these are just some examples. We do have some time. So all the buttons will be on the left-hand corner. This looks just like what we did. Look, there's your quote. Does that mean we have referrals? Tina, good answer. No. If we have that quote button, that means we can move forward. We don't have any referrals. If I had referrals, this would say refer. Here's your left navigation bar. We're on the coverage summary. Coverage summary is where It's a summary of all your coverages. This is where you can amend your deductibles. This is where you can amend your limits if you need to. Again, to refer back to that AOP, if you have it too low and it declines, you always come to the coverage summary. And guess what? There's the suggestion. Look, this person here put 0, but they said we have to have at least 5,000. So again, 25% of that at a minimum would be our minimum taken offer. Obviously, that will get it out of the decline status. Now, underwriting might have questions after this to say, really, maybe you should think about that because you just didn't understand what was actually supposed to be in there. So just to let you know. So once you're at the next level, guys, what's the second level of the status is quoted. We have draft in the beginning, then it's quoted. Look, it's quoted. That means, woohoo, we have no referrals or the referrals have been approved. Remember I said these buttons are dynamic. Now that I'm here, see how I have finalized. Before I only had quoted or referred. Now I have finalized. And this is a group question. If you do not have this as a notable note, I'm going to come get you. I'm just kidding. Do not hit finalize unless you are ready to pay. You got the credit card, you got the cash, you're ready to bind this because it will lock it for real. And Janine's not going to be happy if she has to unlock it. But yeah, so you don't touch this until you're ready to rock and roll. But remember, we said we're in the second level. Quote it. Now look what I have. I have clone. Woo! Dave said this means I can change some deductibles. I can have, again, remember the new screen see version 1 down here. Once you clone it, you'll see version 2. What it does, think about it, guys. It's going to be the same submission number. So you got this submission, version 1. It's the second level of the stage, quote it. So that means I can clone. When I clone it, your screens are going to change to version 2. Going to stay the same quote number, but this guy right here, it's locked. It's going to go back to draft because draft is like the edit mode or the beginning. So your version 2 will go back to draft. You can make your changes. If you do something crazy, it could refer out in version 2 because your limits are just way out. But if you're just changing some deductibles so that you could have one for 5,000 and one for 25, you're good. So really what it means is version 2 will go back to the beginning stage or status to draft. That's okay. Version 1 will stay quoted. When you're done changing your deductible and then you rate it, all you have to do up here, you still should have your quote it button and just quote it. And that locks your version 2, which means under these documents here, I just want to point this out. We have some time. Submission, this is what we are right here. Remember, we were walking down the left navigation bar. Documents. What was the one thing that Dave said about documents? Oh, that's right. You have to be in the quoted status first to get a quote letter. So let me just talk about what this documents tab is, because I know you had a very good question. What's under there, Dave, other than the quote letter? I'll tell you. What happens is this is the repository, so to speak. Any of the system generated documents like the quote letter, if the policy is issued, the policy will be there, the endorsements, cancellations. But in the event, you're not going to put them here, but as you're sending information in like losses and SOVs and, signed contracts of stuff, underwriter will put that there. So this documents area is like a repository. It's stuff that's uploaded by the underwriter as well as system generated stuff. So it's right there. Messages, these screenshots are old. We don't have this here anymore. But you can kind of see the dynamics of the screen, how now that we're in the quoted status, the next level, now we can finalize. So what would happen here, let me see, I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so this document, see how it's under documents? It'll tell you here's your quote letter. You won't see this if it's in draft. You won't see this if it's in referred because we haven't agreed on anything yet. I'm trying to, okay. So this is really talking about basically what I just did. Now you have the finalize button because of the status that you're in. Once you click the finalize button, only if you have the money, this will change to finalize, but these will change a little bit too. Remember I said this, that the buttons are dynamic. You'll see pay invoice. And I think there's another button up here too. So I just wanted to point that out. I think, okay. So this is when you select pay invoice, you're going to get this. So if you had 12 pay, you'd see all 12 of them and you would just click the first installment and then pay it, right? This one is annual. That's why there's only one entry here. So this is basically where I'm going to stop because you finalized the quote and then you clicked on pay invoice. And now it's saying, all right, we want to talk about, all right, I want to pay installment number 1 or the full pay. And when we click on pay, you're going to get this link. And I'm going to make this point and then I'm going to back out of the installment piece because I already told you, you can see that. You can view this on your own. It's in the documents. Right now, this is one screen and you select the payment and click pay. The next screen that pops up is this. And as you can see, it says press send and it'll send to the customer. So if you click send link, it will send the link to the customer and then you have to wait until they actually pay it. So they can put the credit card information in and, you know, all that good stuff. 90% of the time, you guys are doing it yourself. You already have that information. So this is a notable note, and then we'll be finished with the slides. You have the ability to cut and paste this and put it in your own browser and then click on the link. You don't click this link, cut and paste, put it in your own browser, and there's screenshots in here for you. And then you can click on the link and pay it yourself for them, which usually is what happens. Because if they're out of the country, or if they're busy or whatever, or they're not tech savvy, you may never get it paid. You know, it may take for a while. It may take a while. Whereas if you have their card information, boom, you can cut and paste it, put it in your browser, pay it, done. It takes a bit for it to cycle, which means, and we do it too, even Janine and I, sometimes now we know, we go right back into the quote and say, oh, it still says it's a quote. Remember Janine said a Q means it's quote. So our prefixes are QTX, which would be quote Texas and then a number. Once it changes over to a policy, it changes to PTX for the state and then another number. So it may take us 15 minutes for it to actually do its hocus pocus. And it might be one of those things where you come in the next day and then you see that it's bound. And let me pick on somebody else. Steve had a very good question. When do I get my policy emailed to me? No. Once it actually cycles and it turns into a policy and it's bound and the payments, you know, there, all you have to do, let me see if I can jump. I'm going to jump back a couple documents. I know this isn't this is not a bound, but once it actually turns to a policy and it actually did its hocus pocus, documents, you'll see the quote letter that you originally had, and then you'll see a policy. So this is where you can get the policy. So I know that I was talking a million miles a minute. I did see some of the chat out there that some folks don't have the product, some have it that haven't used it, and some folks have played around and test drove it a little bit. Hopefully, this will help you. So I'm going to, since we have a couple minutes, I'm going to go back to this. It's always good to go back to where we started to wrap this up with a nice bow. Remember, we started out in draft. We moved up to the next level to quote it. We moved up to the next level, which would finalize, which means we're ready to rock and roll to bind. And then there's these two other statuses that we could have. In this document, it tells you draft status is the initial entry. You can get the price indication. It could be a referred or not referred, which means because it's the first stage and when you put it in, it might be no referrals or it may be a referral. You know, where do you look? Underwriting results. This is where you're going to get a list of your referrals. You can't clone it. Once you move up to the next level, Then you have all the functionality. You can clone, you can get your quote letter, you can see the installment breakdown. This is locked, which means you can't do any changes to limits. You can't do any changes to um, deductibles. But that's why we have the cloning function. You clone it, create another version, which that version 2 will go back to the draft status because it's the edit mode, so to speak. You can make your changes, put it back into quoted. Now version 1 and version 2 are in the quoted. Finalize. We always click finalize, right? No, false. You never touch this unless you're ready to rock and roll and pay. But again, remember those buttons are dynamic based on the status. So we already talked about this. Again, here's just a bare bones. Here's the steps you take if you have a referral. You look under your underwrite results, you put it in the price indication into the rated status, hit refer. You don't hit refer, nobody knows about it until you yell at us 3 days later, and then we realize what you didn't do. And here's what happens if you do have a referral. These are the steps. These are just the bare bones. And here's some things to speed up if you do have a referral. And again, guys, you're going to start knowing what you need when you get in there and start quoting. Okay. So give me 1 second so I can flip over. So we're just going through what we started in the beginning. We talked about the expiration, 10 days. You can clone it so that you can bring it back alive and push the 10 days out again. Can you clone your quote and change deductibles? We said we could. Are there WASH guidelines in place? We talked about that. Never use the finalize button. The product, we see this occasionally. Remember, if you start without work comp or with work comp, you can't clone it to change back and forth when it's the product. You basically have to go and start the quote all over again for the other product. Now, this really isn't a system thing, but I know you had a good question. What happens with umbrellas? So 3 does not have a traditional umbrella. So we don't have like a monoline umbrella. The cool thing with that is it's not a monoline, it's not a minimum premium, it's not a whole set of its inclusions and exclusions just for that product. All you have to do is go under the liability, increase it by $1 million, if that's what you need, $1 million. Liability is liability. So just increase it. We do have lots of hotels that require big umbrella limits like 15 million, and really all that does is the underwriter needs to see, like the contract from the the franchise, their requirements. So, when you start getting into the big umbrella limits, this talks about, the email. Remember, you're going to get an email from us, and that's how you're going to respond back and forth. How do I generate a quote letter? Remember, once it's in the quote or the finalized status, you can just go under that Documents tab and click on it, open it up, print it, share it, do whatever you want. All right, let me move over here. And then the billing. So this, we hit on some of these things, but again, that's going to be something that you can talk about or look at when you get to that point. Okay. So, Diana, I think I'm finished on my end. I got it right to 3 o'clock.
Yes, thank you so much, Dave. Does anybody have any other questions for him before we get started with the little game we have? The
That's
practice
good.
will make it perfect. So when you just go get in, if you guys don't have access, please contact us. I'm going to send the email where you guys can contact us and simply say 3 logins, 3 access, and we're going to guide you through how to get access to 3 insurance depending of the state. There's a couple of states that are not available yet. So only the states that are available in 3 insurance are the ones that might get logins. Otherwise, we have to wait for them to launch that or not. So we have a question. I would like to know more about the product guide. Okay, perfect. If you would like to know a little bit more about 3 insurance in general, we have this link, which tells you the common declines, the target classes, all these links that I sent to you over the over the webinar and everything, you might find it there, and more information, how to request the logins and everything. So guys, please use this link. It's in our website, but you have it here. Okay. And thanks everyone to making this possible. I really appreciate all of you time, especially pre-insurance team. Thank you so much for making this possible. We love to making this webinar, spread information, and have the agents learn how to utilize the platform in the best way. So if you guys have questions, again, I sent the marketing email, marketing@londonuw.com. Any questions about 3, let us know. Also, you already know they have a chat feature. You can contact them too if you have any questions throughout the quote. And thank you again for participating and staying until the end. And thank you, Dave. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Guys.
And good luck. Good luck.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.